And here we are with another edition of the Children's Literature Channel over the New Books Network. And I'm Mel Rosenberg, your host. And with me today, a wonderful lady whom I just met 7 minutes ago, Carol Doeringer. That's a very special name for me. We'll talk about it soon. And Carol, we are here to celebrate your brand new book. I'm tempted to say your brand new stinking book. I love stinking books. I love skunks. Show everybody your wonderful book, If You Wake a Skunk. Congratulations.
Oh, Mel, thank you so much.
This is your debut picture book.
It is.
And coming from a very, very lovely publisher, Sleeping Bear, right?
Exactly.
And we're going to talk about everything, your career and your journey on the way to becoming a traditionally published picture book author. Yeah. So first of all, just show everybody the book.
Okay. I'm going to hide behind it here.
No, don't you dare. Don't you dare. Open it up. Read a little bit from it.
Oh, okay. Well, the book is called If You Wake a Skunk, and you might predict that it kind of tells what happens if you wake a skunk. And it starts out with two campers who happen upon a skunk in the woods. And it is snoozing because skunks are nocturnal, and it's kind of like nestled inside a hollow tree stump, which is a place where a skunk might spend the night. And it's a second person point of view cautionary tale. So there's a narrator who says, shh, the skunk is sleeping. You know, if you're smart, you'll back away. And with each page turn, well, the little campers sort of ignore the advice. So, you know, it goes on. The skunk is giving warning signals, which are true to the animal. So here, partway through this story, silly you, still standing there? See his nostrils, watch them flare. Sniff, he gets a whiff of you. Shoo, before he sees you too.
Can you show everybody? Yeah, can you show everybody the spread?
Yeah, isn't it beautiful? The illustrator is Florence Weiser. And oh my gosh, she nailed it.
I love this book. I'm going to start out by saying bravo for this debut picture book. It's funny, it's engaging, it's endearing, and it's unconventional in several manners. First of all, we don't have enough picture books in the second person point of view, and we don't have enough picture books about skunks. No. And the book is nonfiction, but it's snarky nonfiction.
Yeah, I think the publisher actually labeled it fiction because of the camper story, but it is what we might call it informational fiction. There's definitely, I was shooting for accuracy, yes, but snarky, yes, I agree.
I love it, and the character who's the point of view is somebody with an attitude, because yeah. He's getting angrier and angrier with these kids who are not listening to him.
Right.
And at the end of the day, shall we divulge the ending or not? No.
Oh, I think for our audience here, it's no problem.
Go ahead. So what happens in the end, Carol?
You know, finally, he's aiming. You must retreat. So the campers indeed finally decide to skedaddle. And then the narrator says, well, his stink ran out 3 days ago. All his hand waving and stamping and charging, it was all for show, which is true of skunks, of all types of skunks. They really do not want to spray. It's a precious commodity. They probably can spray up to 5 times before they use up all the musk, and it can take up to 10 days to recharge. So the animal has evolved to give this elaborate warning routine, and it's, you know, not exactly formulaic. Not every skunk will go through the exact same routine every single time, but pretty much And I don't know if you noticed, I'm sure you did, Mel, that this particular protagonist I chose, the star, is the spotted skunk, which is a little known species of skunk whose range has actually shrunk, about 90 to 99% over the past 5 or 6 decades. And there's a nice, robust group of scientists collaborating in a variety of states to try to document what that animal's range is. And, to see if there's any ability to nudge more of a comeback, I suppose. But when I discovered that, it was because I had bumped into some funny videos. I was in my research, I included Googling skunk warning signals, and I discovered there was this one silly thing I had never heard about that does most of its warning signals, stamping its front paws while in a handstand, waving a tail, hissing, charging back and forth, boo, 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 while in a handstand. And it's just too funny for words. So I decided that's the guy I was going to write about. And lots of reasons for kids to learn about that too. A species that's, in some states, it's listed as a species in trouble. It's not on the federal U.S. endangered species list, but it is in some states according to their former populations and now. So yeah, anyway, so it's kind of fun. I learned a lot.
So my affinity for skunks is not because I'm a skunkologist and I did not notice that it was the spotted skunk, but because the odors that they produce are cousins to the odors that bacteria produce in the mouth when they're causing bad breath.
Oh, I need to file that
And
snippet away for school
yes,
presentation.
absolutely. We have to talk. So I studied bad breath for 20 or 30 years.
Oh,
And I think there should be more stories about skunks. I've actually written one, but I have to dig it out now of my back cabinet and spruce it up. Probably smells. So Carol, we're going to get back to this. There's another thing that you did, which you're not supposed to do, and that is a rhyming debut book. And I'm
yeah.
interviewing more and more authors that have rhyming picture books out. So maybe the theory is wrong. If you're good at rhyming, and you are, go for it. And I'm going to come back and ask you where you learned to rhyme like that. But let's
Okay.
start with Baby Carol.
Oh,
You know what I'm going to ask you. You can ask the
I,
questions.
yeah. No, if you want to know what my mom read to me, it's a funny thing. I have one sibling, and my brother is 13 months older than I am. And he and I were talking about this just a few months ago. Well, of course, my book was coming out, and he was cheering me on, and he looked at me and he said, "Do you remember what Mom used to read to us when we lived in?" And he named the town we lived in when we were very, very little. And that would put us at ages 4 and 5. So we know from where we lived. And I said, "Yes, she read The Teeny Tiny Woman." And he said, "Yes, that's exactly right." And it's interesting to me that I remembered from age 4, which to me is a stretch, but I think it's because she read the book to us, and he and I both agree, each one of us, one on each of her knees in a big chair, and she would read it. And I don't know if you know that story. It's from an ancient English ghost story, and it's the teeny tiny woman who wants to make a teeny tiny soup, and everything she does is teeny tiny, and she goes through a teeny tiny door into a teeny tiny cemetery, and she sees a teeny tiny bone sitting on top of a teeny tiny grave, and she decides to take it home and make her soup, that she would make her teeny tiny soup out of the teeny tiny bone. But by then she's tired, so she takes a teeny tiny nap. And while she's napping, she hears a teeny tiny voice, "Give me my bone." And, she explores a little, and she drinks some milk so she won't be so scared. And then she goes back to bed and she hears, "Give me my bone." And then so finally she decides that she has to do something. So she gets up and she says, "Take it." and then she could go back to sleep or something like that. So my brother and I'm sure the reason we remember it is my mother would have hammed it up enormously. And I'm sure she read it to us over and over and over again because we could participate and we were the ones who got to yell, take it, or give me, so yeah, absolutely. That, and then of course, I remember others, certainly Charlotte's Web was something that was in yours and my childhood era. When, of course, today it's still a wonderfully received book, but it was relatively new in that time. The Dr. Seuss books were relatively, some of them recent at that time. So, would have been part of my growing up. But the one I can take back to almost unbelievably young age of 4 is Teeny Tiny Woman.
So in your bio, you've stated that as a young child, you loved to read and write.
I did. I always had something to say, and I'm pretty confident that my elementary school teachers asked me to please put it down on paper, just so I wouldn't be chitter-chattering and disrupting class, perhaps. I think, and I always laugh too, because my most desired toy that I recall from probably age 6 or 7 or so was a brand new doll that had just come on the market and was being widely advertised, called Chatty Cathy. And she had a little audio module in her, and you could get her to say different things. And I remember my parents saying, well, Santa Claus just thought this was the perfect present for you.
Is that the one where you pull the string and
Yes, I think so. So yes, I was
uh,
known for having something to say from a very early age.
okay, but you didn't end up becoming a writer. And you wanted to be a scientist. You were all over the place, a regular polymath.
I really was all over the place. I thought I wanted to be a scientist, and I did science fair projects and took science courses and did well in them. I think because I just was always a very inquisitive kid. And gosh, if you're at all curious about the natural world, uh, you know, how things happen around you, science teaches you an orderly method of being inquisitive, so you can actually draw some conclusions. And I was absolutely drawn to that. I decided to do a major in French in college, though I really cannot put 2 plus 2 together and come up why did I do that? It left me both unemployable and in debt. So I'm not sure that was the right decision, although it gained me an opportunity, part of why I was in debt, to live abroad and to live in France and with a family for a year. It was, oh my gosh, life-changing. So it was a detour in a sense, although it was language, right?
Yeah.
And I think my training, learning a different language, maybe helped steer me later in life. I wrote coursework for a big bank trade association on how bankers need to write the documentation that justifies the decision to make a loan and the way you put a commercial loan together. And it needs to be a very well-written, persuasive document that takes writing skill, both in pure language. We teach these bankers to please avoid the dreaded passive voice, because it doesn't really let you know who was doing the thinking or making the decision, and then
Well,
as you work.
although scientists do that all the time.
Yeah, well, bankers can't. I mean, it was decided that XYZ would be a good product. Well, who made that decision? And then I actually chuckle at myself when I did make my eventual turn to writing picture books, is avoid the dreaded passive voice. I thought, well, I'm good at that. I'm that one's been on my radar screen for other reasons.
You're
So
certainly a wonderful writer. All of the rhyming is so good and cute, and all of these synonyms you have for get out of here, go away.
you know how I told you I lived in France for that year, right? So my French siblings, so to speak, the kids in the family, we're very close, some of us, even, that was 1975. Even all this time later, we've swapped children. I had one young girl who's now a mom, but when she was 9 and I had a 9-year-old, she came to live with me from France for 4 months to learn English, right? So we're very close, and I mailed them a copy of If You Wake a Skunk, and these are, the adults speak English in various degrees of facility. So they were aware that I had this coming, and they were celebrating with me that it was coming. And I sent this book to my dear friend Sylvie to read with her grandchildren, of course, knowing it's in English. And she emailed me. She said, your book came today, but I think I'm going to need some help from Google Translate. I never knew there were so many ways to say, please leave in English.
So that's incredible. In French, when you want to say that you can't stand somebody, you say je ne peux pas sentir. I can't smell that person.
Right.
You could,
Exactement.
merci. So you had a wonderful career. You worked in banking, and you were an entrepreneur, and you had your own company for many years. You did consulting work, and you were on a roll. That's a very bad pun. A bankroll. And then what happened? What happened?
Well, normally I would be in the springtime out every week in some bank or some company's conference rooms teaching financial related workshops. But one year, 2015, I had some orthopedic surgery, just part of getting old. And
don't
I
say
was
getting old.
No, I call all of those things AIBB, age-induced body betrayal.
Yeah.
It just happens. But anyway, so I was home during the early spring, which typically I would not be, but I was recovering from something, some repair. And I noticed out my window this giant woodpecker, a pileated woodpecker, and they're 19 inches tall. They're very large birds. A pair of them were repeatedly pecking away at a tree, probably 30 feet, right? Just maybe 8 or 10 meters from the window. And it took me a little while to realize they were excavating. Then the mystery was, are they making a sleeping spot, a roost, or are they going to nest? And as I was home, I was able to, day after day, initially I just picked up my iPhone and I stuck it. We have a spotting scope because we live up on a high bluff overlooking water. And I like to look at the ducks and whatnot. So I have like a—
Carol, hold on a second. You've just now raised an issue.
What's that?
A disproportionate number of the authors that I interview live in the countryside. It's incredible. Have you always been a countryside? Like, I think maybe the advice we should give writers is leave the city. If you want to be published, go find a bluff somewhere.
Oh, maybe.
Watch giant woodpeckers.
No, it was seeing this change.
Have you always been a country girl?
No. I grew up in a suburb. I grew up in Whitehall, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus. It is absolutely a suburb. You'd go to a park if you wanted to have a nature walk. We had trees and bushes in our little eighth of an acre. But that was it. So no, but my husband and I, 22 years ago, decided that we had visited friends who lived overlooking a lake. We said, oh, we really should do that. So we did. But I was able to see a story before my very eyes. These woodpeckers made their nest, raised their young, and I had such a front row seat, literally. And when it dawned on me that a teenage woodpecker is as insolent as a teenage human, that's when I determined that there were stories in nature that I had never known about. And then famously, a childhood friend I was documenting these things on video, and a friend said, and sharing, she said, "Oh, you should write children's stories." I went, "Oh, that would be easy." Yeah, right. Turned out not to be easy, but it planted a seed. And that was just 2016, I think, when I decided to try to play around with telling that particular story in picture book format. And, I might go back to that someday. I didn't ever do anything with it. I never, whatever, but it launched an inquisitiveness, that I think maybe the disproportionate number of picture book writers who live surrounded or near nature is because when you take a closer look, I don't think you're human if you don't say, wow, or why, or are you kidding me? How did that happen? And that's like in my book, I was able to dedicate it to my 4 grandchildren, which was such an emotional moment. But I think I don't know it exactly what I said, but, dear, name the 4 grandkids. Whatever you see, if it's sometimes scary or you feel like it's squeamish, I want you to pause and take a closer look to admire the wonder of wildlife, even if at first it feels a little scary, and that was not part of my childhood. I was the squeamish kid. And so I may be taking myself back and saying, well, if I had only really taken a closer look at what these insects are doing, and understand their role in nature. Yeah,
And
maybe.
you've observed woodpeckers and other birds, and you've
Yeah.
observed bats.
Oh, I
But
don't.
but but
One year
what
I
about?
documented a whole wasp nest for 3 months
I'm
from
sure.
start to finish.
What about cockroaches?
They have their place. We live in the woods, so we have wood roaches, and they're not maybe as frightening to a homeowner as people who feel like, they've come in, they've nested. But wood roaches come in for shelter, and I just look at them and go, "Aren't you handsome?" Um, in many ways, they are. They have this beautiful mahogany tone to them. So
Carol, you wouldn't get along with my wife. Anything that resembles a cockroach. There's a story here, but it's a ghost story. Um, the ghost of the cockroach. So, okay, what am I going to ask you next?
I don't know. I'm going to let you decide.
Well, no, okay, so you had this epiphany, and somebody mentioned to you should go back to writing because I want to remind you that you did write as a kid.
Yeah.
So somewhere this woodpecker came knocking, and then what happened?
Well, I wrote a couple of stories about the pileated woodpeckers. Um, I discovered that this wonderful writer with a wonderful website called Icing on the Cake, I think was the page she had. Dori Chaconis is her name, known for her rhyme. She published how to write rhyming picture books, how to write in rhyme guidelines on her website. And I embraced that and did my best. And then I reached out to her and said, "Do you ever do critiques?" And she was pretty well retired by then, but she said, "I think I could do that for you." And she gave me she did not charge me enough money, I'm sure, but
She
she
charged you some money.
yeah, she did. And I was a very successful banking industry entrepreneur. I was happy to pay her. And she gave me some nice suggestions, and that gave me a feeling of confidence. And then you asked a bit ago, how did I really learn to write and rhyme? um, I, I fiddled around with those manuscripts, and then for a variety of reasons I put them aside. And when I later on in life decided to try again with rhyme, like a few years later, I happened upon the Lyrical Language Lab, which is an online course offered by Renee Latulippe. And you can do it with a live group doing Zoom, or you can do a self-paced recorded version of her modules, which I did to fit into my schedule a little bit better. It was wonderful. I just recommend that to anyone who is interested in learning about language, using not just rhyme, but lyrical language. And If You Wake a Skunk began as an assignment, as I think it was like write 2 or 3 or maybe 4, 2 or 3 stanzas about an animal. And I had a very vivid memory of a skunk encounter from many years ago when I lived in another state. Where I first discovered that they will give you a little get out of here before of course, I didn't even know about the faking part at that point, but I drew into that memory to write. It would be fun to complete this little assignment. And the assignment was just for me. There's in the online self-guided, you don't have anyone that's reviewing or giving you input. But I realized how much fun that story could be. And as far as getting the rhyme, once I understood from Renee's lovely explanations and demonstrations that there was this thing called a scansion, where you could break your words into appropriate syllables. And, in my case, I have a spreadsheet background, being a finance person. I converted it to an Excel. I did an Excel spreadsheet with it.
Katie House did it. Wow, you're the second author in a week to tell me this. It's the last thing I would do. Excel spreadsheets for a picture book. Wow.
Well, for the rhyme, I sure did, because I wanted my meter to be accurate, and I wanted it to talk to me in a very visual way. And I have a giant monitor, a second monitor, and it's very large. And I made that Excel spreadsheet huge. And, I was able to then look and see where my syllable breaks fell. And, according to the rules of Renee, who encourages you not to commit rhyme crimes, where I could have an extra unstressed beat. I mean, I did this, I guess maybe it appealed to the my friends would tell you I'm a hyper analytical person, and some of them don't understand how that worked out to write children's literature. I'm not sure I get it either, but the rhyming to me.
Well, you looked at it as a science.
I did. Yes, I did. And then I found
this is something that I'm learning now for the second time this week. In other words, there is an analytic approach to being a lyrical and poetic writer.
Yes, I believe so.
This goes against the grain. I've been saying for years that the only people who should rhyme are people who are musical, who sing and play music and write music. And I'm going to have to change that to include bankers.
I don't think anyone ever wrote a rhyming rationale that goes to the bank regulators that explains why we made this loan. But using very concise, spare language to get the most information across, that's something that is in common. And not all, I don't have at the moment, I don't have any other manuscripts that are fully in rhyme that I'm working with, although I have an idea for one. I think I will. But what I have done is included sort of a mixture where at the beginning of each page, I have one I've been working on. At the beginning of each spread, there's a very brief rhyme. And then I develop the concept, it's a nature thing. I develop the story of that creature in prose, but drawing from the words I chose to use in the rhyme. So I feel like it's a nice blend that helps with the music of the story, but still allows me to use prose for some of the finer points. Anyway, it's
many classic children's stories have these repeating rhymes.
Sure.
Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead. I'll
I will grind his bones to
bones
bake
to
my
make my
bread.
bread. There you go. I don't remember the rest of the story. Um, but so now is a good time to open your wonderful book and to read another passage.
Another passage. Well, let me see here. How
I highly
about,
recommend to people to buy this book. It's
oh,
wonderful.
you
It's
are,
different. It's skunky. It's got a little chutzpah in it. And I have a feeling that the person that wrote the book is actually the person I'm speaking to right now. The voice is it's like a secondary Carol Doeringer voice.
maybe. All right, I'll read you a spread. You inched ahead and took a peek, but if he sprays you, you will reek. For weeks you'll stink from head to toe. If you're smart, you'll turn and go.
Ah, wonderful. So you polished this manuscript with a critique group, without a critique group.
Couple of critique partners, one formal critique group. And then I actually approached Renee Lachigi.
SCBWI
Oh yeah, yeah,
meetings.
I actually paid a freelance editor who was recommended to me as being very, very good with rhyme to take a look. And I think she found 2 or 3 words that she felt maybe an alternate choice might work better for me, but it was almost nothing. And then when it went, it was acquired by Sleeping Bear Press.
Oh, you're running ahead here.
Okay, back up.
For
Did you
sure.
want to know my submission batting average?
Yes. And I
It's
want to know everything that you did because Carol, you know this from the interviews.
Yeah,
You are now a traditionally published author as of several weeks ago, and you are one of the several thousand writers that gets a traditional publishing deal.
yeah.
And even though some people say it's just luck, and I know it isn't, you have to be lucky, and you have to find an agent or a publishing house that loves skunks and doesn't mind that it's in second POV and that you're a debut
And that it
author
rhymes.
and
Yeah.
that it rhymes and that it's a bit snarky. It's not nice to children. These children are really miscreant. It's like
Yeah.
yeah, they get the goat of the teller. Yeah. So how did this happen? How did the magic, this miracle happen?
Well, I submitted this story 3 places. And I queried it to 2 agents. At the time that I was doing that, I'm looking at what I wrote. I built a spreadsheet around my query. It's not a very big spreadsheet though, because as of May 2021, when I received notice that the story would be acquired, I had made a grand total of 11 agent queries, 11 publisher submissions, and out of those 2, I hit pay dirt once. So I had done very, very little. And even today, in the years it took for the book to come to life, my total to date is 20 submissions to publishers, 18 queries to agents, and 1 sale. So I cannot complain. I know that so many writers have had to go.
You're going to complain.
I'm not. I said I can't complain.
How could
I
you
have.
complain? First of
I
all, you're not Jewish, right? Secondly, you have the luck of the Scottish or whatever your background is. Um, and
Yeah.
thirdly, you are one very talented author.
Well, thank you.
And
Well,
put that together in Beetledy Bum, you have a wonderful new book.
yeah.
And
I haven't succeeded in selling a second, but I've not done much submitting. I think I get as much out of just writing And you know what? When COVID happened, that was about 2 years ago. Of course, I was no longer traveling around the country teaching workshops. That ended, absolutely. And I did some teaching using WebEx, Zoom, etc. But I did not really care for that, because when I'm teaching something, a skill that makes people uncomfortable, they're not sure about themselves, I like to connect eye to eye. I like to listen in on small discussions, so that when I want someone to take a risk in that classroom, in that workshop, and I can give them the body language signals and the eye contact that says, yes, I know you know the answer to this question. You're safe. I can't make those connections in classroom environments that are electronic, the online. So I stepped away from traveling, and I was retirement close enough age anyway. But if I had not had children's writing as a passion and had not already been deeply engaged in it, working in part-time to my, in and around my business pursuits and my personal life, of course, I don't know if I wouldn't have gone crazy, stir crazy, but it meant that even though I officially retired, I didn't stop. I just migrated from writing about banking and finance and teaching to writing more children's literature, spending more time at it. And and especially with nature as my primary topic. I do have some stories that have entrepreneurial tones to them, themes, but with nature as what a sanity saver. When we were all hunkered down and hiding out, I was able to wander my property, and I do some macro kind of photography and videography where I'm like, wow, look at what this ant just did. And that I had a place to put that discovery in writing some literature. So it has the idea of writing a children's book has given so much to me. That I got one published is icing on the cake. And I would love to publish more, but if I don't, I'm still a pretty happy human being for having gone in this direction.
I think that you should be elated.
I am.
Shame on yourself if you're not elated, Carol. So
I
one thing.
am.
So okay. Before we like have several things, I'm going to forget all of them. Most people were not scientists or banking people, and they don't realize that the odds of something rare happening, they don't fit statistics. These rare events, I this interview is about you, but I've gone through exactly the same thing over the past 6 or 7 years.
Mhm.
Exactly, almost like 1-to-1, except that I'm cranky and I'm Jewish. Having this one success, and you never know when it's going to come and how it happens. But all you can do is work very hard and hope for it.
Mhm.
It's not like
Yeah.
one out of. It's not like one out. And this was a submission to Sleeping Bear or to an agent. I'm missing this part.
Oh no, Sleeping Bear. I have not succeeded in winning the heart of an agent. So I tried that for a while, and I got me nowhere. So I
You did
began
the
submitting.
contract without an agent?
I did. No, I'm very familiar with contracts. Having, worked, although all my professional contracts in the past were all work for hire or other, work for hire type of work. I've in my MBA program, I needed to take contract law, that type of thing. So, I wasn't cowed
So
by
do
that.
you have an agent today?
No, I in many ways I wish I did, and
Of
hope
course.
springs eternal, and I continue to query, but it's they're approached by so many, and I feel like right now I'm noticing, and I don't know if you are, but
Mhm.
I feel like there's an even a greater migration of agents' interests toward author illustrators, which is a financial benefit to them to represent both sides of a picture book contract.
I've interviewed
Um,
agents on this show who actually admit to that.
no, it's
But
true. And you know what,
yeah,
my background, Mel, I call myself a champion of the entrepreneur. You know, I was working with bankers to help them understand that these people, whether it's a mom and pop little store or whether we were financing a mega behemoth company, these are human beings taking risks. And we need to admire that and see how they take those risks and how they hedge their bets. And, you know, what evidence do we see that these are strategic people who will
I
confront.
agree with you. I'm on
Right, and I
record.
see that,
Yeah.
and I see that with agents, and I've had a chance to sit down with a few where I've taken workshops where agents have come in, or I've been at conferences and seated next to someone in that profession, and to say, you know, I cannot resent that. It's a limitation for me because believe me, other stick figures would laugh at my stick figures. I have no artistic talent, but I cannot take away my own business background and my understanding of what it takes to be successful at all kinds of industries. In my way back years, I financed a publisher. And so, you know, I've had a chance to think about these things. So I don't begrudge them that choice. Of course, that's a choice that you should make if it makes sense to you, because it's you know, agent arithmetic strikes me as being pretty daunting. So good for them for even taking that risk. And I also think too, I'm not thinking that agents are ageist, but okay, I'm in my late 60s. Do I have 20 years ahead of me to keep cranking out books? If I were an agent, I'm not so sure I'd want to go there, but maybe not. Again, I don't begrudge agents being picky because my business background tells me they have to be picky and why. So good for them. And you know,
Let me share with you my experience in interviewing agents. So first of all, I'm on record as saying they should get more than 15%
I
because
agree.
they're a bit mischievous to work for such a low share of the income.
Absolutely.
That's the first thing. So when you look at the numbers, you know, they don't make very much at the beginning, do they?
No,
Even if it's an author illustrator.
no,
Secondly,
no.
I encourage everybody to keep trying because agents do look for really good authors. And maybe there's less than there were, and there are, but I know that there are still agents who are looking for really splendid authors. And you are a splendid author, and you have this splendid book to prove it. The other side of the coin is something that you've alluded to, which is I had Steve Fraser on the program 2 weeks ago, and he gets about 12,000 manuscripts a year, and he has 40 clients. Would I like to be his client? You bet I would.
Yeah,
But
me too.
what are the chances when he gets 12,000 a year?
It's
So,
crazy.
but that doesn't matter, you see, because as long as you, Carol, are enjoying it and your writing is improving and you're giving of yourself to the community, and you have this beautiful book out, which is also one in 1,000, we're going to keep trying. You have me now as a big Carol Doeringer pennant holder. What do you call this flag?
Oh, thank you, Mel.
I'm for you. So don't give up.
Oh, I haven't given up. I have plenty of manuscripts. I'm back to
How
submitting
how how
to
many is plenty,
publishers.
dear?
Oh,
I sent out a query today, and I was going to write. I have 20 submission ready manuscripts, and then I said, "Oh no, I better not write that." But I do.
yeah, good for you.
No,
That's
no. What do you mean good for you? It's like being constipated for 7 years. You know, if you're writing day in day out, and you haven't
yeah,
found an agent,
yeah.
the manuscripts build up, don't they?
They do. And you know, the funny thing is I'll look at what I have in my submission ready folder. And when I go back the 3 or 4 years, I go, well, actually, now in retrospect, is it really submission ready? Should I take a second look? And I'm finding that's true. Yeah,
And why
just learn.
and why not?
Right, exactly.
I'm going back over old stuff, like taking an old coat out of the closet and seeing if it can be stitched up and fixed, right?
Yes.
So we're at the towards the end of the show. It's unbelievably been 45 minutes. You are a wonderful person. I would love to meet you sometime. I
Okay.
cannot, and especially because I also have a book coming out now.
Yes.
I understand the excitement and the feeling of being very privileged, and the other hand, feeling a little bit of an imposter syndrome, but then being very grateful to whatever the stars were that aligned themselves. And
Yes.
I really urge everybody to go out and buy Carol Doeringer's new book. And If You Wake a Skunk, it's funny, it's snarky, it's it's educational in a good way.
Thank
Um,
you, Mel.
and I was really tickled pink to interview you today, I must say.
This was great fun
And
for me as
and
well.
and and however old you are, sweetheart, I'm older. And if you're experiencing ageism, I'm experiencing a Octarian ageism.
I mean, I
And
honestly, I don't think it's ageism. I think it's pragmatism on an agent's part.
no,
It's just pragmatic.
it isn't, because if you have the right stuff, it doesn't matter how old you are. Okay, some writers will write one book. You've written one book, and some people are one book people. I might
Mm,
be a one book people now. I don't know.
yeah.
But you have now the option, and I hope, of creating stories that are just as good, and I don't see why people shouldn't run and grab you. Okay,
Okay.
just if I may, you're a woman, and this is a woman's field. So imagine if there's ageism, I'm also got maleism,
Yeah,
being a
I agree.
male in this world, to the extent that people have told me I should really take a female name when I'm submitting.
Oh, yeah.
So, and I've experienced, anti-malitism.
Hmm.
I don't think there's anti-Semitism in this field,
No.
but there's anti-malitism. It's a
Hmm.
woman's area.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, last piece of advice you want to share, Carol. This has been wonderful.
Well, the advice I would have is, given the uncertainties and the long pathway, uh, whatever you're writing about, write whatever you are passionate about, because the intrinsic interest of what you're writing is what has got to carry you through this very long journey.
It's a journey that you have to enjoy. You have to look at the scenery,
Yes.
because
Yes.
if the destination is a traditionally published book, the odds are against you, no matter what sex you are, gender, religion,
Right.
geographical area, age, hairstyle. The odds are really against you. But
Yes.
for those of us who love it, I call it my itchy scratchy.
Uh-huh. Good one.
And I feel that and this doesn't usually happen, but today I feel like I interviewed a real kindred spirit, somebody you meet along the road at a oasis. And it was wonderful listening to you and really enjoying your story. So I'm Mel Rosenberg, the host of the Children's Literature Network. No, yes, the Children's Literature Channel. Listen, I always get that wrong. Let's start again. I'm Mel Rosenberg. That's right. And I am the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And I've been speaking to the wonderful, amazing Carol Doeringer, who, as a second or third career, has broken all the barriers with a book that I love about skunks and published by Sleeping Bear, whom I love, and it's called If You Wake a Skunk. So, Carol, I can't wait to see your next book, and there will be next books, and I'll have you on the show again, and we'll talk about that too.
My pleasure. It has truly been a pleasure. Great fun.
The fun was mine. Okay, it was ours. Take care, dear, and keep in touch. You are a wonderful soul.
Thank you.